Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for what I believe is the last session of the day. So we have saved the very best until last.
True.
So we're going to be talking today about freelancing. Now, I can imagine it's something that you guys are maybe considering, something that you've heard a lot about, maybe seeing lots about it online. There's a lot to unpack. So we're going to be having a very open, candid conversation. I do really want you guys to engage as much as possible because we can say what we think you might be wondering, but really we want to hear it from you. So at any point throughout the session, I am a little bit blinded, but just put your hand up and I'll try and make eye contact with me and just give you a little wave. And let's make this really interactive. We have two fantastic panelists who are here today. I kid you not, we have the best of the best to answer all of these questions about freelancing. Robin comes from very much a freelance background in our industry, so can answer all those questions, alongside being a Breakthrough Talent winner. And Steve will tell you all about his business, but he really understands the intricacies, basically, let's just say it how it is, the boring stuff, the behind the scenes,
That's true.
But it's important to get all of that stuff right. So and I come from a background of freelancing as well. My name is Kat Kevin. I run NOWI, the Network of Women in Events. I can see some people that we've chatted to throughout the day, so thank you for swinging by. But without further ado, I'd love to hear just a little bit, very quick introduction first from the two of you a little bit about your background and what's brought you to this panel. Robin, after you.
So hi guys, my name is Robin Templeman. So I have been working within the events industry, mainly specific the live music industry and major events industry for about just two to 3 years. I am a recent graduate. So I graduated last year, but during my time at university, I did a whole load of freelancing alongside university. So I worked a range of different events, including, Reading and Leeds. I was event assistant for Junction 2 Festival, did some Christmas shows and Christmas events, all that fun stuff. And now I am working full-time on a one-year contract with an event production company called LS Events.
Excellent. I'm Stephen. I'm the founder of MyPay. As Kat very kindly said, we do all the boring stuff. So we'll help you with your accounts. We'll help you as and when you need mortgages, income protection, basically all the stuff you need so you can go and live your best life like Robin's doing.
And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to call this panel To Freelance or Not to Freelance, because it's important to get all the facts before you make your decisions. And we can all fall victim to the glamorized LinkedIn, Instagram, freelance life. You don't have a boss. You pick your own work days. But we'll unpack a little bit of that later. But first, I'd love to just turn it to you guys in the audience. Could we maybe get a show of hands, just to see, are you already working in the events industry, events and production? Pop your hands in the air. Yeah, so a couple. And then pop your hands up if you are employed currently. Great. And then pop your hand up if you are freelance currently. Okay, great. Well, that'll make for a really interesting conversation. I think we've got a bit of both in the room. Maybe people that are new to freelancing, and it's phenomenal to see so many people already starting their career and jumping straight in. Which is something that actually, when people ask me about freelancing, the first piece of advice that I usually give is not to go freelance straight off the bat, because sometimes it can be hard. It's much easier when you have a great network already. Like, say you've been working in-house for a production company or an agency, you've probably been out, met loads of clients, you've met other freelancers, you've built your network, your personal brand, you're on LinkedIn. But Robin, would you agree that, because you also went freelance straight whilst you were even at uni, so would you agree with that?
I mean, so from my personal POV, I was in a position where I was still at university and I couldn't go straight into that full-time employment, or it just didn't really work with the schedule that I had. I was doing uni work, had dissertation and whatnot. And so for me, I felt like the flexibility of the freelance lifestyle worked really well for me. And I felt like, working 1 to 2 days a week on an event alongside, doing assignments and whatnot really worked in my specific situation. But I'm aware some people, they're not in full-time education. And, I would say if you're not in that scenario, I think I would agree with you in a sense of like building up a network and, meeting lots of people who are connected to the industry. I think if you're working full-time for an organization, that's a really easy way to make those natural connections quite quickly. So it's just dependent upon the situation you're in, I think.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about being self-employed is that it is an option, and it is very common in our industry. I think it's no surprise that quite a lot of the crew that are needed for events, obviously throughout the year, there are requirements we need a few people full-time behind the scenes, and then as the event approaches, the scale of freelancers that is required is going to naturally increase as well. So it makes a lot of sense. But Stephen, what are some of the things in terms of someone's going freelance for the first time? What is that checklist? What do they need to be doing to make sure that they're compliant and that they're ticking all the boxes?
Yes, great question. So when you first start, there's a lot to consider. Firstly would be how you decide to get paid. The two main options you'll find are limited company or self-employed. Now, the main difference between those two depends on how much you're earning, depends on how long you envisage yourself contracting, and also how much time you have. Normally, if you're going first time, you would normally go self-employed. That's a very easy way to get paid. You have your money which you earn, then you have any expenses you incur, and the difference, that's what you pay your tax on. It's something you can set up yourself. You just need to keep an eye on what it is you're invoicing and what it is you're spending. You notify HMRC, you get what's called a unique tax reference number, and then from there, at the end of the year, you can either do it yourself or you can go see an accountant. Sometimes you'll have your first year done by an accountant, just so you know it's right, gives you that peace of mind, and also making sure that you claim the right amount of expenses. Because what we see more and more is when people do it themselves, is they're a little bit nervous and they think, oh, I'm not sure, can I claim for that? And they don't do it, whereas actually they could do. And that means they pay more tax than what they need to. As you sort of go later into your career, and maybe if you have a team of people working for you, or you know this is your long-term solution, then you would look at something more like a limited company. Now that becomes more of a structure. It's a bit more complicated, but it does give more tax efficiencies. It gives you more chance for tax planning, and it also gives you a better setup for dealing with clients.
I think that's a really good point. It's not even something that we'd really planned on talking about, but I guess, is there anyone in the audience that's maybe considering starting their own business? Just so I can really put you off doing it. Don't do it. No, I'm joking. But I was self-employed for 8-9 years, and very much fell into it. The first time someone said, send me an invoice, I said, what's that? And then I realised that obviously I was working in a completely irregular situation. I wasn't registered. They hadn't done their due diligence. We were both wrong. And recently set up my own company, which, yeah, I kind of just assumed that because I'd been freelance for a long time, it was going to be very similar. But actually there is a lot more to think about, and things are very different. And nobody teaches you this at school. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to learn by doing. But when you're learning by doing, but you have a team that depend on you and your clients have an expectation, it does add more complication. And something that I think you touched upon is around having an accountant. And it's something that people do ask me quite a lot. Do you think I should get an accountant to do my taxes for the first year or not?
Yes, we would always recommend it. If you are self-employed, to be honest, it's a very easy process, so it's not very expensive. You can either go to see a high street accountant or obviously look ourselves, but anywhere can do it is not going to be that expensive. Limited companies are a bit more. As you say, they are a bit more formalised. There's more to it. But with there's a lot of opportunities there in order for you to do it in the best way for you. Whether you're doing training, whether you're going away to work, even things such as if you have a spouse or partner who does a bit of admin for the business, there's different opportunities there in order to make it work for you. So we'd always recommend getting professional advice, especially when you start.
There's your disclaimer. Please get professional advice. You didn't hear it from Stephen. But that's a really good point. And how much roughly would you say it would cost to get an accountant just to do your taxes, just end of year returns as a freelancer?
It depends a little bit. So, we had someone who came to our office about 3 months ago, and they had 3 years worth of tax returns to do. They had no records. They couldn't remember what they invoiced for. They couldn't remember what expenses they've incurred. So that one, and it does happen, it does. They came in, they were very apologetic. We told them not to apologise. It doesn't affect us. They came because it had some letters from the revenue giving them these nasty letters, you've got this fine and so forth. But we spoke to them. We actually got someone nice who wrote off the fines. We completed the returns, and we gave them a system going forward to make it easy. Now, that one was a bit more expensive because we had 3 years. We had spent a lot of time hand-holding to get everything right. But if you do it correctly, you keep hold of your invoices, you've done your expenses, then you're talking £150. It's not much. It's a business expense as well, so you get tax relief
Straight
on
back
it.
off tax, yeah. So for 150 quid, I would seriously say it's a no-brainer. If you're considering getting an accountant to do your taxes, do it, because 150 quid in the big scheme of things might seem like a lot of money, but realistically, that will probably set you up for success. And it's all about the mental load, isn't it? Like, you are maybe a brilliant AV technician. You are not an accountant. Accountants go to accountancy school for years to become accountants.
Thanks.
And would you say, so what we at the business, so when I was self-employed, I had a spreadsheet, like most event professionals love a spreadsheet. And in my spreadsheet, I had, client one, this event, I'm charging X for the day, X number of days. And I thought it made me look professional, so I put a number on the invoices. Don't start it at 0, start it at like 73. It makes you look like you've done loads of work. You can make it up. That's fine till you become VAT registered. So you can either have like a spreadsheet and you track, because that's one piece of advice that I really, really can't stress enough. When you're a freelancer, if you don't get paid, you can't remember. For whatever reason, there's a dispute, having really, really clear X number of days. And then how are you tracking that? So now we use Xero. I know QuickBooks do similar work. My accountant swears by Xero. Robin, have you ever used like a spreadsheet or accounting software as a freelancer?
So I just have a bog standard spreadsheet that I use, and I just have it in the drive, and I track all my invoice numbers, like you were saying before, make sure they're all numbered and assigned. I just write down the date in which the invoice is sent out, and just tracked it through there. That's kind of bog standard, but it does, for me, it did the job really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as a self-employed person, you are the system is as good as the person who uses it. So as long as you're tracking it, and if you, you turn it from red to green once they've paid, or you have a tick box yes, or you write the amount that they've paid, as long as you're really tracking that. Has anyone in the room that's freelance ever struggled to get a client to pay them? Let's face it, we've all been there. If you haven't, yeah, I'm really, really happy for you. Unfortunately, it probably will happen at some point. Now, this is where it can become a little bit tricky as well. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on sort of freelancers that are maybe, especially when it's big companies, and unfortunately it is often the way. How do you get that back?
It's a common pain point within the industry. So, firstly, there's no magic solution. Normally with business-to-business relationships, you tend to have penalty clauses where you would, if someone's late paying, they would pay an interest or a penalty. However, the reality is, in this kind of working for someone, you tend to agree to their terms and conditions, and they won't put penalty clauses in which are going to damage them. So the best advice we can give, say, for example, you have 30-day payment terms. So that means from when you raise the invoice, the client has 30 days to pay it. So it's not when you do the work, it's when you raise the invoice. So first and foremost, the day you finish the work, raise the invoice. Okay, if you can't do it that day, do it a day later. The second thing I would advise is when it's a week to go, I would send a reminder, just a very friendly, Hi, it was great working with you. Just to let you know, the invoice is due in 7 days. Any questions or queries on the invoice, just let me know. This does two things. One, it lets them know you're on it, so they know if you don't pay you, you're going to be chasing. But two, if they do have any queries, it gives them a chance to answer it before they go on that 30th day to pay you, and then they come back saying, oh, the hours are wrong or the rate is wrong. It gives you that opportunity to do that first. So that's the best thing to do. And obviously, if they don't pay on time, chase on that day.
So very good advice. I think it definitely shows that you're proactive. Realistically, no one has any queries or questions. Like, that is just you chasing, and that's fine. Like, most of the time they won't have queries or questions, let's be honest. I'm very fortunate as a freelancer. I've always been paid, even though sometimes, like, as you say, really, really good point. Send your invoice like the minute the show is done. Don't wait. Do it at the show when you've got some downtime. Like, people always wait to do these things, and then I just see crews sat around just like eating crisps, and it's like, it's fine. We all need to just sit around and just chill every now and then. But if you've got some downtime in the event, make the most, get on top of your admin, and then they're paying for it as well, which is even better, because there's nothing worse than going home after a long event, you're knackered, got loads of washing to do, trying to find your favourite black t-shirt, and then you have to go and do some more admin, and it's like, just, if you can do it at the event, do it. One thing that we've struggled with at my business recently, and it's, thank goodness it's only happened recently, but occasionally we've had clients that just haven't paid for different reasons. Like, sometimes they're, I don't know, we do the work and then afterwards they change their mind. Like, in our industry, it is very common for people to pay afterwards. Like, that is just our industry. And you mentioned about the payment terms. Unfortunately, when we are the small fish, we are not setting the payment terms. Usually those big companies, it's usually 30. Sometimes it's 60, which is a whole other topic. But we've had to resort to using debt collectors, and it's not been fun at all. It's not something I'd ever thought I'd have to do or want to do, but we have had to do it. So, yeah, any thoughts on debt collection?
Obviously, it's not ideal, and especially in a situation where you're working with clients where you want repeat business. Although, whether you want repeat business if they're not paying you is probably another question. But yes, it's a necessary, and if you do it, and people know you would do it, it probably means they will pay. So it's a last resort, but it has its uses.
Yeah, and I think it's just really important to just have these conversations, because these are the kind of things that nobody talks about. But in our WhatsApp over at Now with Networking and Events, it is a theme that comes up. XYZ client have not paid me. I see them at events, what do I do? And it happened to me. There's this one woman, she's owed me money, and I see her at an event, she's like, oh, hi, and I'm like, hi. That invoice from last year, like, are you going to pay it? Is it going to be a debt collection? Am I going to have to take you to small courts? Like, because ultimately that is kind of the process to follow, which isn't fun at all. It's not why we go into what we do, but it is just something to keep in mind. And always ask for advice. Like, don't go through that alone. I would say, like, if a company owes you money, likelihood they probably owe other people money as well, especially people that run the same job. So try and just chat with other people.
Yeah, sometimes if you can also speak to the client, find out why it is they haven't paid you. It could be that they have every intention to, but it's a cash flow, in which case you may be better off waiting as opposed to incurring costs from debt collectors or small claims where, to be honest, no one really wins in the end. So sometimes it's a case of understanding, why have you not paid this time? And if they say, well, we're waiting on this client to pay us and then we'll pay you, then you may take a view, okay, so if you're going to pay in 2 weeks, I'll give you that leeway. And sometimes just having that conversation keeps a good relationship and can get you paid quicker in the end.
Yeah, all very, very good points. With debt collectors, hopefully the idea is that they pay the debt collection fee as well. Like, we have come across that situation where you do have to then weigh it all up, but hopefully none of you get to that point. But if you do, there are some great organisations that offer support with that as well. So ask your network, have conversations with peers. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. I guess maybe a little bit on a lighter tone, Robin. You were freelancing for a couple of years, and now you're full-time with one of the best events companies, in my humble opinion, LS Events. But before you were with LS Events, where did you find those recommendations? Was it through like word of mouth, connections? How did you get on site at those events?
So I was quite head set on working festivals off the bat. I feel like when I was in sixth form, I was very much like, I really want to work in this industry. And so I feel like I've been doing a lot of research in the background of events companies that, I'd really like to work with, or I did some research looking into festivals I like and looking into the roles I like. And in terms of getting that sort of first experience, I just started off volunteering straight up because I didn't have a lot of practical knowledge of actually how to freelance correctly. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to start off with the entry-level roles, right at the bottom, and try and understand how an event is made from the ground up. And through those volunteering opportunities, I would then speak to people on site and just try and be as curious as possible. So speak to your managers, speak to people. Say if you're doing accreditation and you're checking people in, try and have a conversation with them and be like, oh, that's a really cool job role. What's that? And just being curious on site is so great for just picking up natural contacts. Depending, it doesn't really matter what role you're in. If you're curious and you have those conversations with people, you can open your eyes up to a whole world of new contacts. And then obviously LinkedIn as well, utilizing that. And like I said before, I did quite a lot of research on companies I want to work for. So I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn looking who worked for those companies, just sliding into DMs and being like, hi, you've got a cool role, can I speak to you? And just having quick conversations. And yeah, I think being curious and just chatting to people, it really does go a long way, and people really do appreciate you going into their DMs and chatting with you. It's a lovely thing to have someone be like, oh, I really admire your work. So yeah, I would say definitely LinkedIn, chatting to people on site, and then going to events like this, and going to, if there's any networking events in whatever side of the production industry you're in, just kind of actively seeking those out and trying to speak to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think people don't necessarily see it this way, but when you're a freelancer, you're a business, and your service is you, and the service you are providing. And a nice way to kind of draw that parallel is if you were a business, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself for those of you that were in the previous session, but if you're a business and you're trying to sell the product or the service, you're going to be out there, you're going to be doing marketing, you're going to be doing outbound sales, you're going to be doing you're going to want to be represented in the media, you're going to want to engage and tick all those boxes. So when you're a freelancer, try and think of yourself like a business, and then it kind of you level up a little bit as well, because you start taking it a bit more seriously. And I think at the beginning, when you're first getting into it, you take what you can get and you say yes and you do all the things, but actually how do you then step it up to, I am a professional, this is my service, this is my value, this is my worth. And then when you see yourself that way, your clients will see you that way as well.
Definitely. And I think it's good to if you have any free time at home, draft up a couple of different elevator pitches for different contexts. So if you're going to a networking event, you see that there's going to be someone from a certain company, then maybe sit down at home, spend about 20 minutes writing down, okay, what have I done in the past that can appeal to this person, and just kind of spend a bit of time kind of grouping the experience that is going to be relevant to that person, and then chatting to them based on that experience that you have.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good tip. And I love just how we've spoken about this before, about how you do it, and you have a big spreadsheet, and I've got a big spreadsheet as well with all the clients, all the people.
You love the spreadsheets.
There is a common theme. And so, yeah, I guess that kind of ties in quite nicely. But one thing that it kind of doesn't get spoken about much either. So a couple of things really, and we'll come to the latter. But the first, how, Steve, maybe do you have any recommendations? It's quite tough. A lot of freelancers will have seasonality in their work. And so maybe they're getting 50% of their revenue comes from 2 months of the year, probably July, August when the sun's shining. Or how do you have any tips on budgeting?
We do, yeah. We would normally, where you can, if you can set up a 3-month buffer, because as you say, normally it will be seasonal. Certain things such as festival time, there will be more opportunities to earn money in various roles. Also, we advise, obviously, with what happened with COVID, that it is important to make sure you are doing some kind of planning. Because especially anyone who was a limited company during that time, you got very, very little support. It was quite bad what the government did. So yes, we would always recommend having a buffer zone for that period of time. And also for illness, holidays, those kind of things.
And I think within this industry, it is sadly quite common that sometimes contracts do drop out like last minute, and there's a lot of people who have loads signed up for in the summer, and then suddenly the rug's pulled under them, and suddenly those contracts are gone. And if you don't have that buffer, it could be really risky on finances going forward. So I think it is really important to have that safety net.
Yeah, definitely. I think hand to mouth gets you so far when you're employed and you have a little bit of stability. I listened to a great podcast, a bit unrelated, but it's called Girls Who Invest or something.
Yeah.
Girls Who Invest. And they talk a lot about, it's like a plan that they go through, and like basically you work through the stages. So the first is like clearing off any debt. Obviously ignore student debt. That just goes away with time. But any kind of like credit card, things like that. And then you get to a place where it's like the build stage, and they say that the very first step in any financial planning, it's so boring, but it's getting an emergency fund, and an emergency fund isn't a credit card. I'm quoting their words exactly. I'm guilty. I don't follow this advice, by the way, but I'd like to give it because it is so true. As a freelancer, having that emergency fund, because if something does, and it depends on you and your circumstances. If you're you're a parent or you've got a mortgage, obviously you're going to want a bit of a bigger emergency fund. Maybe if you live at home, and like I lived at home for years when I graduated from uni, because it was just like, then I didn't have to worry about that. I could take more risks, and with that I could say yes to opportunities and jobs. But yeah, having an emergency fund as a freelancer, especially if you have a lot of overheads like car payments or a mortgage or kids or all of the above, you're going to want to have that. There's nothing worse. And I've seen it. We see it a lot now when people come to us when that happens, and you can see the, like...
Yeah, it's a stressful time.
It's stressful, and then it's really savage, because as well, employers sometimes see that, and like if people are really desperate, then the employer they have the negotiating power. They can see that you need something, so they know that they might, and it's terrible. I hope that doesn't happen, but yeah, that is something to consider.
Regarding what you're talking, hi, my name is Clara. Regarding what you're talking about, the last minute cancellations, is it normal like in the UK? I'm from Argentina, so it happens a lot. But in the UK, is it normal like in the letter of agreement that you put like a cancellation policy or something, or I don't know, depending the level of freelance or...
I think it's very tough. I'll take this one if you guys don't mind. I've had a lot of experience because I did a lot of freelancing, and I started off in festivals and in music events. It's the worst, probably, out of like when corporate events, like usually they're going ahead, like corporate events, when Coca-Cola plan their staff event, they're not going to cancel it. They've committed millions, their annual event. The likelihood that it gets cancelled is very low. In festivals, it happens very commonly. And since COVID, it's happening more and more. I think we've lost 130 festivals this year. So it's going to happen. Like, these are people who have committed their time. It's so easy. Like, I always think to my dad, and my dad's like, well, honey, make them sign. You're a freelancer. You make them sign. It's like, Dad, I love you and I love that, but that won't work. At the end of the day, as a freelancer, you really have to remember that you are, sadly, but you're very easily disposed of. Like, realistically, yes, if all freelancers got together and took the company to court, maybe. Like, realistically, the mental energy, the brain power and the time and the resources that it takes to take a company to court is just way more than whatever you were going to be paid. And even as someone a bit more senior, 2 years ago, something happened, something changed, and they just cut my contract. It was 3 weeks work, peak of summer. Couldn't fill that time, and it's really tough. It does happen. So really reading through the terms and conditions, like bigger, more reputable companies have more of this, but highlights the importance of having professional like insurance. Do you know much about that?
Income protection.
That's the one. Again, I don't
Income
have it.
protection is it's a policy you can buy, and it covers you for downtime. So if you have work that you're due to do, but for whatever reason it falls down, or you have an illness and you can't work, then income protection is what kicks in.
Yes, insurance, something to look into. Like, again, another thing to talk about when you're freelance, you do have to quite often have public liability insurance. You can also look into things like professional indemnity insurance. Like, there are lots of things really to be doing. Again, we could talk a bit about pensions, we could talk about rates, negotiating rates. Like, there is a lot to talk about this. We could do a whole day's worth of content. But I really want to hear from you guys in the audience. Do we have any burning questions? Pop your hands up if you do. Because if you don't, maybe we can talk a little bit about negotiating. Oh, yes, we have a question.
Hello. You okay? Oh, I don't like the sound of my voice, sorry.
You sound great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as a freelancer, have you got any like tips for, obviously it's a career path that's going to have a lot of ebbs and flows, and how you can make the most out of the ebbs with the lack of work, and what we can do to kind of still be active and feel kind of present in the career?
I mean, with freelancing, I think especially within the events context, like you said, there are a lot of ebbs and flows. And what I find is with freelancing, there is so much admin work that goes behind, actually securing those contracts and, developing your own brand and putting yourself out there and, doing invoices and chasing and doing all those email comms even before you're on site and even before you're paid. There is so much admin that goes into that. And I think if you know there's going to be periods, for example, like January is usually the dry period of the festival industry. If you know that you're going to struggle to get any contracts during that time, or if you don't have as much work as you would usually get, I would always suggest really utilizing that downtime to bosh out as much admin work as you can, and really sort of like sit down and try and research for like the rest of the year as you can, and like do as much as you can, reach out to people. Maybe if you're quite big on wanting to develop your personal brand as a freelancer, maybe pre-write some LinkedIn posts and like get it scheduled. Now they've got a scheduling feature on LinkedIn, which is life-saving, but they've got that now. So I think if there is that downtime, there's always something you can be doing to support your own career going forward. And I think really utilizing that for like doing all that admin is the best advice I could give.
That or go to Mexico, take a holiday.
Yeah, yeah.
Margaritas, cannot recommend enough. I joke, but it is a good tip to really, after a few years, you will start to understand the seasonality in your specific sector. And then once you've nailed that, then you can take nice long holidays, because it's kind of a forced holiday anyway. If there's no work, it is literally cheaper to live in Mexico once you're there. So my recommendation on that is take nice long holidays and reward yourself, because compared to most traditional industries where, people get tired after their 9 to 5, like the events industry is not a 9 to 5. When you're working 12-hour days for a whole summer on end, you deserve those margaritas or whatever it is, if it's, the tacos, whatever. So
Who wouldn't like a bit of winter sun?
exactly. That is my top tip. Maybe just something, unless we have any other questions. If so, yes. Oh, go on.
Hello, love the event today. Thank you all for being here. So my question is to do with the transition from kind of full-time to self-employment, right? So I think a lot of the time for me, especially jumping into freelance this year, after 3 years in content creation and marketing, at first I was very much like, okay, I'm gonna do a list from A to Z and do everything under the sun, and I was really excited. But then, when it actually came down to it, the day-to-day things of just managing yourself, finding even the right environment to work in, and having more of a routine to abide by, to help you really find your workflow and all those kinds of things. What would you guys say to help some of those navigations?
I mean, I always would suggest, once you're freelancing, I think pre-setting sort of your work parameters and kind of almost making a schedule for yourself on how you're going to work. So if you say you're going to do freelance work Monday to Friday, you could schedule it from 9 to 5 and run it like a usual job. And something I've done recently, because I work full time for LS, but we are a completely remote team, apart from when we're on site. And something I've done recently is I've gotten a co-working space subscription. So it is a local space in city centre in Manchester. And I go in there and I start my day there, do work from 9 to 5, or 10 to 6 in our context, 10 to 6, and then once I finish, I clock off and I can go home and completely check out of that freelance or that working mindset in my context. But I think it's really important for me personally to sort of have that separation of space and to have that routine sort of pre-planned. So I think if you can find a space maybe outside your own home environment where you can do your work and sort of like preset how you're going to run your week, I would always suggest something like that, because that's really helped me in terms of like boundary setting. Because I think for me, when I was freelance, I would often do my hours for the day, but I'd be working in the same environment, and then I'd go, well, I could just do, another hour or another hour. And then it's like, okay, 3.5 hours over what I was meant to do. Okay. And I think it's really just having that separation of space really helps set those boundaries.
Yeah, really good tip. I did try that as well. Like, my coach gave me some really good advice. She was like, plan out your day. It does not work. Like, to this day, I'm incapable. I think it's just how my brain works personally, but I think maybe there are a lot of people that can relate to what I'm saying. I can put in my calendar, I'm going to do an hour of this, an hour of that. I'm going to open my laptop, and obviously I'm very biased about NAUI, so I'm very passionate. It's more of a passion project. I've got things that are urgent that I need to do for my clients that are paying me, and I still just wake up and I'm like, I just really quickly want to go and do something for NAUI today. So, and actually, in recent years, I've kind of come to peace with that. So, like, my coach and I have been working through it. I just ride the wave, and I think there are days you're not going to be feeling it. That is the beauty of being a freelancer. If you're not feeling it, don't force yourself to sit at your desk all day long and then know that tomorrow you're going to have to go. Because try and get out, do something different, come back to it when you're really feeling it. And when you're in that creative flow, if 5 o'clock hits and you're like at the peak of this is great work, keep going and just do what works for you and lean into that. And it's different for everyone. Do we have any more? There's some great questions from the audience. I'm sure you've all got some burning questions, so please pop your hand up if you do. Well, it was great whilst it lasted, but I would love to. There's one thing we haven't spoken about yet, and it's something that comes up a lot at NAUI is, how do I charge? What rate should I go with? So it's a bit like £1 million question, and we've got less than 3 minutes left, but we can try and give you a couple of really practical tips on negotiating rates. Take it away.
It's when it comes to negotiation, one thing when we were preparing for this, Cash showed me up the NAUI website, and because we look after a lot of different sectors, what I saw on there, I don't see in many, is it had a list of day rates, so the market value for various different jobs, and that is such a good idea, and it's a fantastic place for anyone to start, because sometimes as a freelancer going for the job, you might really want that job, so you end up giving yourself a lower value than actually what the job should be. But in any negotiation, if you can know what the market value is and you've got something you can point to for the client as well as to yourself, then that's a very strong negotiation. You're not asking for more than the market value, you're just asking for the published market value. And I think for most people that works.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about what Stephen's referring to is the NAUI pay guidelines. It's on the NAUI website. Go and check it out. It's very useful. And it breaks things down into, if you're literally at a junior level and you don't have a lot of responsibility, it will associate a rate to that. If you have a more senior role and you are supervising a whole load of people, it will give sort of guidance for each role. It will give rate guidance depending on how much responsibility you have. And for me, that was a real game changer, because when I first got asked for a day rate, I was literally like, I have no idea. I was like, you say for me. And, luckily, who I spoke to at the time, they didn't undershoot. And they were like, you need to, actually, look into this and, research, all the value of the work you do. But it's, very important to be aware of, how much you should be paid for the role you have.
Ultimately, shame on companies that do not display the pay rate in their job adverts. So if I could end with one call to actions, if there are any employers or people that are promoting jobs, please just put the pay rate, and even if it's a scale, because yes, maybe 2 people would apply, maybe Robin and I would one day apply for the same role. if we have different experience, yes, it might range between 200 and 300. Okay, well, at least we know what the range is. I might be able to fight a little bit more because I've got 1 or 2 years on the clock more than Robin, but realistically, we both know that we're being paid a fair rate. So, yeah, some really great tips there. And thank you all so much for being so engaged. If you have any questions, we'll probably be hanging around. So feel free to grab us, ask us any questions. But I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for attending. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. So can we get a big round of applause, please?
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.